Well, today the Dow dropped another 600 points. What do you think needs to be done at a state level to ensure Nebraska is insulated as best as possible from the nationwide economic crisis?
Has been fortunate because we've had a very good economy for a very long time, and we're kind of insulated from the coasts. But we can see what's happening. We see what's happening on the coast, and this Dow and the credit crunch and so forth is going to affect us. And I think the thing we have to be cognizant of is that we have to watch how we spend our money. Not just as individuals, but as a government, we have to watch how we spend our money. There's too darn much waste in our state government and our local government and our county government. And our taxpayers are not going to have that money if the economy continues on this downturn. So I think there's not much we can do in the legislature to affect the national economy and the Dow and so forth. But what we can do is we can say we're not going to spend money on these wasteful projects, and we're going to save our money here at home so that our people have that money and they're not overtaxed.
As I go door to door canvassing, the number one issue that comes up in people's minds is their concern about the economy. We need to make sure that we continue the governor's initiative in reducing taxes, property taxes. It's one of the things. I run a large, sophisticated business, and I agree with Mr. Newhouse, one of the ways that we can get a handle on some of those taxes is to make sure the government operates more efficiently, and I have experience along those lines. And we'll take that to Lincoln with me. We also not only need to be cognizant of the farm economy, but need to understand that it is built right now around the growth in ethanol. Ethanol is part of our solution. It's one of the cornerstones to economic development in agriculture. It's one of the cornerstones to easing our dependence on foreign oil. It's one of the ways we can make sure that hard-working families have additional earnings and that they don't pump it into the gas tank with increased gas prices. It's a complicated issue. It's going to take approach from a lot of ways, but reduce taxes, efficiency in government, and understanding that the ag economy is important to support. Those are our solutions.
What would be your plan to stop illegal immigration?
I mentioned it earlier, and I would go back to it. And again, having been an employer, knowing that it's possible to not hire illegally, and in fact extending that to contractors who worked for the hospital to make sure that they also didn't hire illegally. I know this is possible. This all comes down to documentation and making sure the individuals who present themselves are who they claim to be. Part of that has to go back to giving employers a tool that verifies that this is valid documentation. Above and beyond that, once we have that in place, it is a fair expectation that employers who continue to hire illegally are in fact penalized and have fines against them. I know it is possible not to hire illegally. One of the issues that can be done, and that we tried, if you're looking for very, very specifics, is references. Simple issue, not family references, but references. If you have to get 3 references from somebody, you can minimize the chances that this is somebody who is not illegal. That is one of many things that can be done. Above and beyond that, we need to make sure we've got solid documentation.
This is my number one issue. It's what I've campaigned on, and it's the number one issue when I go door to door. Because I'm willing to talk about it, and very few are. 40% of all workers in LA County are illegal and receive cash. It means they pay no tax. 95% of the warrants for murder in Los Angeles are for illegal aliens. 75% of the people on the most wanted list in Los Angeles are illegal aliens. 2/3 of the births in Los Angeles County are to illegal Mexicans on Medi-Cal, paid for by the taxpayer. Grand Island is becoming a little Los Angeles. And if you don't believe it, walk into one of the banks whose president and vice presidents are supporting my opponent and see what's on the wall in a big poster. And this is out there. Envía dinero a Mexico. Envíe hasta $1,000 por solo $10. Bajas tráficas. In other words, what they're saying is you can send $1,000 to Mexico for $10. Your supporters are not against illegal immigration. We have to start with identification and verification, and we can do that. We have an E-Verify program, which is out there. Nobody uses it around here.
Time's up.
Nebraska is without a method of execution, but it goes beyond that. Nebraska has executed a total of 3 people since 1976, and maybe you're okay with that too. Inmates remain on death row for decades. Why have a death penalty that's never used? Would you do anything to change that?
Absolutely. On April 16th, the U.S. Supreme Court decided a Kentucky case that said that lethal injection is appropriate. It's not inhumane, it's not cruel punishment. There's no reason why on April 17th we didn't pass a law saying that we're going to have lethal injection in Nebraska. We now have a law that says we have the death penalty, but we have no way to enforce it. You've given the murderer another appeal issue. And, you know, our statutes allow for the death penalty. We don't have a way to do it. We should have had a special session this summer, but we didn't have the guts to have that. We've got to take care of that right away when we get there in January. And it takes too long. We have too many appeals. Frankly, our legal system is failing us in this area. We have too many appeals, and they take too long. We should have full appeal, but then let's move it on. Because if you don't have justice meted out quickly, you don't have justice.
I'm in favor of the death penalty. I think it's a deterrent. I've done enough reading on it to convince myself that it's a deterrent. Nebraska has been very, very cautious, its prosecutors, in asking for the death penalty. So there are a limited number of people on death row, but they have committed heinous, almost unspeakable crimes. Abduction, molestation and murder of paper boy, paper girl, individuals laughing as they left a bank after murdering tellers and clients. About 10 or 12 people on death row. I think the method, no one cares, as long as Mr. Newhouse has said it's something that's found lawful, and we can carry it out, and we need to do so.
Nebraska is sitting on a record budget surplus, and in view of the recent volatile economic turmoil, how should the legislature deal with this surplus?
It's not Nebraska's money, it's the taxpayers' money, and it needs to be given back to them. At least the largest share should be given back to them. I think it's appropriate with uncertain economic times to keep a lesser amount for a rainy day, because I think we all think that those storm clouds on the horizon, if the ag economy doesn't hold up, may roll over us. In addition to that, I think we have infrastructure problems, roads, bridges, overpasses. Some of that can be used to begin to address the needs we're going to have long-term for infrastructure repair.
I agree with Mr. Lohr. That's not the state's money, and we need to return it to the taxpayer. We need to have a reasonable reserve, but $469 million is not a reasonable reserve. Obviously, we need to have that cash reserve, but there's nothing so tempting to a politician, especially a full-time politician, as someone else's money, and that is someone else's money. So let's not look at ways to spend it. Let's look at ways to give it back.